what challenges do you see in terms of shortcomings in application processes? So I think we can start with Tiffany. If you want to start, you are top on my screen.
Great, perfect. Yeah, so I mean, since we have a few different levels of university recognition, the challenges for each can be a little bit different. You know, in some points you mentioned restructuring of programs. There certainly could be some of that. So why don't I start with UCAP first, because that is, I don't want to say it's the easiest barrier to get in, but, you know, it doesn't require other, you know, requirements like having faculty that are actuaries or research. It's just looking at the curriculum. And so some difficulties I see with UCAP applications are, for one, coordinating materials across different departments. So as a reminder, our VEE topics are economics, mathematical statistics, and accounting and finance. And a lot of times these courses don't necessarily sit in, for example, a dedicated actuarial science program, or maybe faculty that are interested in actuarial science don't have as good of connections with these other departments. And so coordinating materials may be a little bit difficult. But it does help if you're able to establish, you know, communication lines or relationships with these other departments, so that you know, the VEE can be established and that we can kind of take things from there. And so I think that's really one big item for UCAP. A lot of times as well, you know, for universities that don't have necessarily a dedicated program, they may have one person who is really passionate about actuarial science. So sometimes a lot of the work just falls on that one single person, and that can create challenges as well. For just to briefly talk about some challenges for CAE and UEC. For CAE, you know, I did kind of mention a couple of the criteria that some universities struggle with. Having actuaries on faculty and certain other requirements for faculty, and also the research component as well. You know, in my experience with some of the universities that we've been working with towards CAE, there's some challenges at the university level where the universities tend to value research in, for example, economics or statistics, but maybe not necessarily actuarial science. So it could be something at the university level where they're maybe not getting the support that they need to move forward through an application for CAE with the SOA. And for UEC, just to kind of round things out, UEC is the highest level of recognition that the SOA offers, as I had mentioned before, and it requires very close vetting of courses before, during, and after each semester. So the instructors, the lead instructor, external examiner, they have to be in very close contact with the Society of Actuaries and ensure every step of the way that their courses and their exams meet our standards. So it's really kind of keeping up on you know, the actual vetting throughout the semester that seems to be the most difficult. Now, I say all of these as difficulties, you know, we are very happy to work with our faculty to work through these issues. And again, you know, I mentioned that we don't have many UCAPs in Africa, and I would be grateful to, you know, receive contacts from faculty in Africa that are maybe interested in participating in our program so that we can work through some of these issues and identify them.
So I think the next we'll go to
Sorry, did you call my name?
Yeah. Sorry, we'll go to you next. Yeah.
Yes, sorry, I didn't hear. So yeah, so the reason I presented those slides earlier on before this session is just to highlight some of the challenges. So I can tell you what I have been doing, because I am the assigned person to deal with associations in different countries as well as universities. And one thing that I had to do is just to do you know, an analysis, you know, to identify some issues, some challenges, you know, talking to the heads of actuarial departments or lecturers at universities. So the challenges are a lot. And I'll start with one of the easiest one: university politics. Okay, so let's just put it up there. You know, the elephant in the room: university politics. So someone will say, I need to get exemption. Sometimes you find that the vice chancellor of the university must approve, just the process to get approval that this is what I want to do. Then some questions may even be asked that what's so special about actuarial science, especially if, let's say, the leadership does not actually understand actuarial science, the demands, and what we expect as a profession beyond students being at university. So we have seen this, we have seen those challenges, and sometimes a head of actuarial science is actually not in practicing. So let's say some actuarial science degrees are in the mathematics and statistics department, and the chairman of the head of that department there is really just mathematics and statistics, probably does not have a view of the other issues. So there is that element that happens in the process. So that's one element. Then resources is a big thing, right? And obviously the university politics also affects resource allocation because the department is given certain resources. Now that's resources in terms of money, because depending on which of these professional organizations here, Tiffany and Irene, depending on the process and any cost associated with that, sometimes the money may simply not be there, but also money for stability of a program by keeping lecturers in the program for the longest period. There's always that challenge that affects accreditation quality, and there's an issue there. Then you have got two issues to do with association involvement and industry involvement, right? So the involvement of the local association is important. And what we have seen is local associations, some of them are not necessarily proactive in actually engaging these universities to help them where there is need, like address these issues of resources. Industry also not necessarily that involved, because these people, when they leave university, join industry. So industry expects to get good quality students, and that then progress with exams. But then industry is also not involved. That's like companies, employers of actuaries, the regulators, and the like. So we have found some of these things. But in some countries, these issues have been addressed. There are very good relationships between universities and local associations and industry. And in other countries, there isn't. Then I think point number 5, just to end, is that just compliance with the accreditation policies and requirements is in itself a challenge. And that really comes back to us as professional bodies to say what we are saying we require. Is it practical? Is it achievable given the environment we are looking at? And I'll give you an example where you may have a requirement that a fellow, for ASSA, for example, level 1, level 2, level 3, there are different requirements. But let's say you're looking at level 2 and level 3, and then there's requirement for a fellow to be there, probably even full time. Now, is it practical on the African continent? That already puts a big challenge, a big stumbling block, which requires us to think, because some of the universities, if you look at them, have been teaching actuarial science. I know National University of Science and Technology in Bulawayo has been teaching actuarial science since 1996. And the University of Nairobi has been teaching actuarial science, I think, also since the 1990s or early 2000. I can't remember the actual date. Makerere has been teaching actuarial science for the longest period. Now, some of these universities have produced some high-flying actuaries without accreditation. They have done it. So why are you as an association worried about the quality when they are producing actuaries already? Let's just help. So for me, that's already a challenge. That's already a stumbling block that universities face. I think I'll end there. Thank you. Sorry, John. We can't. Is it?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Okay, yeah, Alan, yes. Alan, we can't hear you.
Okay,
so, yeah, now we can.
No worries, yeah. Yeah, sorry. I was asking we'll go to Irene next.
Thank you. And I echo much of what Tiffany and Michael have said in terms of the challenges. I mean, each university is unique, and they've got their local accreditation requirements and their priorities. Each university has their own priorities and their own objectives of what they're trying to achieve, short-term, medium, long-term. And they have to do this with limited resources and have to make sometimes some very difficult choices about how to allocate resources and, you know, what is going to be supported when. So we recognize that entirely, but it is a big challenge. And I think that also links into one of the things that Michael has stated, is that there's also university bureaucracy. And where we find that universities that have the senior leadership who know nothing about actuarial science, and they're there for sometimes just political reasons, being involved in the actual nitty-gritty of the details of the accreditation process completely just slows it down because they don't really understand. And so where we find the faster the accreditation goes, it's more where there's direct contact between, and this was linking to what Tiffany was saying, between in our case, the institute and the actual professors, lecturers delivering the program. So it's really important to have that. And yes, the political hierarchy have to be involved, the bureaucracy has to be involved, but let's wait till that is much further on down, where all of the actual actuarial parts are actually have been addressed. And then linking to what Michael has said, the local association is very key. And we recognize that across Africa, with probably the exception of ASSA, they're all volunteer driven, with very few that actually have paid employees, paid staff. So you're talking about people who are professionals, many still studying for their exams. They have day jobs, potentially have families, and then to give their time for the local association, in addition to the university, that's a big ask. So there's huge demands, but you have to have the involvement of the local association. It's just key and crucial to have that. And I think finally, the thing that we've seen around the world is, unless there's actual support from the regulator, and Kenya is a prime example of this, support from the regulator, encouragement, or the regulator is involved, the profession, you don't see much growth of the profession. And I know across the Middle East, some of the regulators have taken a different approach, but they're still trying to drive and grow the profession. So it's having all of these stakeholders of the regulator, the local actuarial society, the universities, the employers, together with professional bodies coming together, and that collaboration and that partnership is key to increasing that actuarial capacity. But just working together, never mind the challenges each of those stakeholders face, is it's doable, but it's not easy. But I think recognizing that it's not going to be easy, and I think the UNILAG presentation, a journey starts with the first step, and that's what it is. So thank you, Alan.
Yeah, thank you, Irene. Yeah, and panelists as well on this. So just one last question on this, and it's just what changes should we be expecting to the process going forward? So I know we've sort of talked about the process as it is, but just talking about what changes would you envisage to the accreditation process going forward, if there are any that are in the pipeline? And I think we'll probably start with Tiffany again.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think, I don't necessarily anticipate major changes, I suppose, to the way that we, deliver our actuarial education, in that we still have the exam process that, for example, at testing centers. A student or a candidate can always go and take their exam there, but with adding our UEC program, our accreditation program, that is very new, and it is another opportunity, another way that a student can earn credit on our pathway. So not necessarily a fundamental, I suppose, change to that. For example, we're always still going to have our exam processes and a pathway for someone who wants to break into the profession. But I imagine that we may find other opportunities like UEC, our accreditation process, for our organization, and certainly developing resources and programs for our international stakeholders as well. Kind of drawing back to my first slide, where most of our membership is in the United States, second is Canada. And if you looked at those bar charts, there's a very big gap between the number of U.S. actuaries and candidates and those in the rest of the world. And so I imagine any changes that we have that you can expect, we'll try to bring in more of those international to us, candidates worldwide. So yeah, I think that's a little bit of my thoughts on the future.
Thank you. So I think next, good to hear from Michael as well.
All right, thanks, Alan. So if you say the word change, changes, and what comes into my mind immediately is that change in this world is the only constant. You need to look at things and then say, well, change is the only constant. And sure, changes have to happen. But so let's say from a professional body perspective, there are governance issues also within a professional bodies, because we obviously try to protect the credibility of the profession. So if you go around the world, every professional body, that's one thing that comes at the top of their mind. So whatever change that happens should still maintain that credibility, should still keep the standards. If you look at accreditation policies, everybody has got its own accreditation policy, and that would have been a well thought out policy that is aimed at maintaining that credibility, maintaining that actuarial standards that we are known to, that we aspire to. So there are those things, which then brings problems to when you are changing. What are you changing? With what objective, right? So that then happens. But let me tell you what we are doing at ASSA. So after doing this situational analysis or environmental analysis, and then we are also saying we have a strategy. It's a strategy approved at the highest level to enhance the development of actuarial education on the African continent. What we have in place as policies, are they practical? What we have as policies and processes, do they speak to the strategy, what you say you want to do, and what you actually have in place, to do what you say you want to do? So we are going through a process of reviewing our accreditation policy. And I don't know the outcomes because I don't sit on the review task force, completely different people that are not in this room. Obviously, I would give input. I will say what I've seen. I'll say the experiences that are happening on the ground. But we said, let's review certain things. Certain things we said are needed. Why are they needed? What value do they add? Do they actually impact or affect the quality of actuarial education or students coming from university? If they don't, so why do we need them? So that process is actually happening, and it must be a continuous process based on evidence that has been collected on the ground regarding the challenges that we have spoken about earlier. Then another issue is case-by-case basis is important. So when you look at these universities and the countries and the regulatory framework or environment, we probably need to look at a case-by-case basis as well. So sometimes if there is a policy in place, we encourage motivation. Say, you said you want this, but here is my story. What you're telling me, it can't be cast in stone. Here is my story. So we are saying we encourage universities themselves to say, well, we have looked at what you have said, but let me tell you what you need. This is what I actually have in place, right? Let's look at Kenya, for example, where if you're a fellow and you are teaching, you are not recognized as a qualified teacher. You must have some PhD, or you must be academically qualified to be recognized as someone who can give a degree credential. Then let's go to the profession. The profession, they say we want a fellow. Already are conflicting with what's on the ground. So you need to sit down, even as a profession from your side, as a professional body, and say, oh, on this particular case, what do we need to do? What is it? What concessions can we give? And the universities must motivate for that and say, yeah, we know what you want, but this is what we have, and let's do that. So I think there is need for that, and there is need for awareness. And my last point is to do with, in the whole process, there need to be increased engagement. So if you look at everyone here, Irene, Tiffany, and myself. So I said only University of Nairobi, only 2 subjects. And Irene has not mentioned any African university accredited by IFoA. I didn't see it, maybe I missed it, but it's not there. Tiffany, is your VE program, you have mentioned a number, but is it actually working? So engagement, if we engage, sometimes it's just lack of information to the universities on what accreditation means, the process they need to follow. So they need to be increased engagement. Like we have done, like this platform, it needs to be done more. More universities called. And in fact, what I think myself, and I coined 2 years ago, what I called African Actuarial Educators and Researchers Network. It has not yet actualized, but we launched it in Victoria Falls. Jonathan Zvey was there. So we are, obviously it's a slow process. We said, let's bring together these educators, actuarial educators, professors at universities in South Africa, everywhere, and professors even in Australia and UK if they can, in a community where they discuss these things, they share the challenges, they discuss accreditation processes, they discuss things, even offer solutions. So I said, let's create that network, a platform for engagement where we engage, we share information, standardize a program as well. Yes, at least if you have 70%, 80% standardization of an actuarial program, it may help with accreditation. So those are a number of things. There are many other things, but in the interest of time, let me end there. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. So I think lastly, we'll just hear from Irene, and then I'll hand it back to Don. Just we just have a minute to go on. Hopefully, you can stretch for like 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much, Alan. And again, complimenting what Tiffany and Michael have said, they've already covered a lot of the things. I think in terms of changes, it is, I think we're going through more of a regular incremental, is the process fit for purpose? And if it's not, let's start changing that. But I think the days of a radical overhaul and radically changing things, we're not going to do that. But we still, understand that we have to keep up with the times. And as Michael was saying, times change and things change, but also employer requirements change. And as the local working environment where actuaries work, as that develops, as the market develops and becomes more mature and more complex, so will the needs in the markets. And so that needs to be reflected. So what our members have also said is that they don't want the standards, the technical rigor, to be compromised. So maintain those standards, maintain that technical rigor, but just make sure that it's fit for purpose. So just to add in a few comments is that there will be changes, but it's more going to be a slow, gradual, taking into account the changes in the market and changes in the environment in which the profession operates. So thank you.